make that 5 o'clock UK time. So I think we're ready to get underway. So welcome to our latest online meetup. So this one's an office hours format. So we're doing a APOC office hours as part of the APOC awareness month, which you might have seen. And so we've got obviously you can see at the bottom right hand corner we've got a few of us today. So we've got me. My name is Mark. I work in the developer relations team at Neo. With Michael, who's third across, the head of developer relations at Neo, and then we've got Thomas and we've got Adam, who are two of our first winners of the APOC contest. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend the first half. We're going to do just quickly go through what is APOC and how does all that work, and then so Michael's going to do a bit of a presentation there. Then we'll talk to Adam and Thomas about their entries, and then in the second half, we'll either go through a bit more stuff about how you can get involved, or we'll field any questions if you ask those in the YouTube chat. Quick reminder, if for any slides that we show, if you can't see them, change your settings to be 720p, and then you should be able to see it. With that, I'm going to quickly hand over to Michael. So over to you, Mr. Hunger.
Welcome everyone. I hope you are as excited about this as I am. So can you still see my screen? If yes, then you can.
Well, we can see you actually at the moment.
Let's see. My browser is a little bit misbehaving, so please apologize for that. So welcome to the APOC office hours, as Mark said, and I'm really happy to have both Adam and Thomas here as well, because they've shown in the last weeks and months that they have some really cool things that they built with APOC, and we want to talk about that as well. Some really quick announcements. As usual, Neo4j Sandbox is available for you all, and it comes with APOC included, so it comes with batteries included. So if you want to try out some of the stuff that we are doing today and you don't want to install it locally, then you can also just go to Neo4j Sandbox and run it there. We also have Graph Connect, where we'll have a lot of demos around Neo4j data journalism, around APOC. We have a special developer relations area where Mark will be there. I hope Adam will also join us there, and some other folks. So be sure to come to Graph Connect if you need or want discounted tickets. Just ping us and we can help you with them. Talking about APOC, how did it start? The history in a few words. So back in 2016, early 2016, we had the first Neo4j milestones of Neo4j 3.0 with procedure support, user-defined procedures, and I started to play around with this because I knew there were lots of things that people wanted to do and they couldn't do it that easily in Cypher directly. And they actually didn't want to write like Java embedded code or extensions or anything else. And so procedures are a really cool way to package some functionality and make it available to Cypher. And that's what we did. So I started with some graph refactorings, and now you can almost say it's like a standard library. It's so much stuff in there. More than 300 functions and procedures are right now in APOC. And actually embedding procedures in regular Cypher statements was a really killer feature of Neo4j 3.0. So you could have a little bit of Cypher statement, find some nodes, find some relationships, and call procedure, do some stuff, and then continue with your Cypher query. So that was embedding these procedures into a Cypher, not having them just standalone calls, was, I think, a really killer feature in 3.0. And what we've done ever since is to evolve it, add new functionality, fix bugs, documentation, have good conversations around it. Many people love and use it, both general users as well as the DevRel team in Neo, of course, and customers as well. So it seems to be quite useful. And the plan is to kind of migrate certain procedures that have been shown that are commonly useful and they are like clean and well implemented enough into the product on an ongoing basis. That's at least the plan. Personally, I see APOC also a little bit as a sandbox where we can try out new stuff and experiment with new features and things before we change the cipher language, which is a quite traumatic change, because as soon as you change the language, you have to support it, and then there's lots of implications of that. And so for me, procedures are an area where we can try out stuff. As you know, probably APOC is open source, it's on GitHub, everyone can contribute, and many people did contribute. And we've seen, especially in recent months, much more development there. We're also partnering with our friends from Italy, with Larus, on APOC development, which is really cool. And if you look at it, so there are lots of different people who contributed to APOC. And it's actually pretty quick. For instance, Andrew Bauman, who is a recent contributor, just started like 2 months ago or so to contribute, and now he's already got like, I don't know, 10, 15 functions and procedures that he contributed. So it's pretty quick. Some related news: we just did some releases early April, one for each Neo4j version. You can find them all on GitHub, and they are also linked now in the both in the blog post and also in the documentation. And we would love your feedback. So everything that went into there is also in the changelog. So please try it out, give us feedback, let us know if something doesn't work, if it doesn't work as expected, or if you have new ideas. Feel also free to send pull requests along, or just message us on Slack or on Twitter also, if you have any ideas. And so we have, for the partnering with Larus, we actually created a GitHub board, a project, we call it, where we track the work and keep working on it. And as you can see on the right column, we already resolved 25 issues of the 100 and something. So that's pretty good for like a month of work. And so that's an ongoing effort. And if you want to kind of track this and want to have a look, then feel free to look there. And the team, the Larus team, has been really doing good work, addressing many things where I just don't find the time to work on all of these. And last but not least, we have APOC Awareness Month, because April, as you know, shares 2 letters with APOC, the first 2 letters. I thought it would be really cool to have like a month around things you can do with APOC, and also contributions and feedback and so on. And that's why we thought that we want to do, like, encourage people to write blog posts where they demonstrate how they can use APOC and Neo4j to build something cool. And so if you want to do that, you still have the rest of the month time. And we planned at least to have 5 prizes per week. So far, we've only seen 2 people submitting, namely Tomasz and Adam. But I am sure all of you are busy working on examples and articles and blog posts. And if you do, then you get gift certificate and a very dedicated special t-shirt that no one else has in the whole world. So let us know when you have something. Also, if you have questions around this or questions around concrete syntax or anything, then answer that. So, and today we have Adam and Tomasz both here with us, and I think it would be really cool to hear from you 2 guys how you got into all of that. So perhaps you could quickly say something about yourselves and tell us how you got involved with Neo4j in the first place. Adam. No?
Adam, you're still still muted. Classic broadcasting.
Rookie mistakes.
There we go.
Brilliant. Okay, so my name's Adam. So I'm a freelance web developer. I originally came across Neo in early 2015, which I think was around version 2.2, where I was searching for a way to store and query social data. Since then, I've worked with Neo using it on a range of products, projects. So exploring social data, comparing roads, fraud detection, recommendation engines. And what I've done to win this award is I've written a series of blog posts based on integrating WordPress and Neo4j. It seemed crazy to me that like WordPress caught from like a quarter of the internet, powers about a quarter of the internet, and there's nothing. If you search for Neo4j, there's nothing in the WordPress marketplace. So what I thought I'd do is I'd write a set of blog posts that would give people instructions on how to integrate Neo with WordPress using hooks, and then go through and provide content-based and collaborative filtering recommendations. And what I've done is I've used APOC to run PageRank. Really simple to set up and to try and provide better recommendations using APOC.
So Adam, can you just quickly, for anyone who doesn't know what PageRank is, can you do a quick 2-sentence summary of what it is and why it's useful for the recommendations on the WordPress stuff you've been doing?
Tough question, yeah. So PageRank is Google's PageRank. Sorry, Google's algorithm. So it's named after Larry Page, I think it was, rather than pages themselves. But what it does is it uses the weighting and the strengths of pages around to affect the ratings and recommendations of pages. So we can use this in the graph to use the relationships between the nodes to actually work out which are stronger and weaker links in the database or weaker pages, and then use those to boost the recommendations.
Cool. Okay, and I guess we can, Thomas, you could introduce yourself and how you got into Neo4j and what you've been using APOC for.
So I've been a developer only for the year, and I've been like the first thing I got when I got into this job, they said you're gonna use Neo4j and GraphQL and create a web page. And so like when I first started using it, I really liked it because it got like the Neo4j browser's got a cool visualization. So it's like very intuitive how to use it, and like because I don't really like using tables because like it's really hard to figure out looking at tables what is what, but when you've got like a picture then you can double click and everything and it's interactive, then like browsing your database becomes fun instead of doing like some boarding work. And since then, like because like Cypher is my strongest language. So like so like everything I try to do with Cypher and APOC, and like I really try to avoid using external services. And that's why like I really do a lot of stuff with APOC, because it allows you to do awesome things with Cypher. So you don't have to use any external services. You can just use the Cypher and it all works as it should, or even better. Cool. And my entry was like, I've done the map box I've done for the client, and to help him search for dense areas of his clients, so for target marketing and stuff like that. And I thought like it would be a really cool thing to do, to show to the people how easy it is to set up like a map visualization of your clients using Neo4j. And like, but that was my first thought what I'm gonna do. But like, it turned out into a 3-part series, because like the first thing I've noticed is like with those location trees, it's like in the moment when you have to start using distinct, like when the sum of anything in your graph doesn't return like correct values, and you have to start using distinct, I've learned that it's probably something with your graph model. And like I've been really, and I've also seen like that when I talk to random people about graphs, they don't really understand how to model. And like, to me, like that is the coolest part about writing a blog, is like defining some general guidelines how to create or model your graph. And but that's really like a challenge, as I said, because like there's like lots of options, and like you can go either way depending on your use case. But like there's still some basic model guides I would like to do to help you ease the graph modeling.
Cool. Yeah, that's really helpful. So your location trees blog post was really super useful in terms of modeling. What are the things that you like, especially in APOC? And as a follow-up question, what are the things that you would want to wish for?
Well, the thing I like the APOC load JSON is very awesome. Yeah, it's like really basic, but it's really awesome, and it lets you, because like I feel like with the APOC load JSON, like the Neo4j like becomes like a database that can like search the internet for you. Like you don't have to have the files stored locally. You just have to have the right AP, and you can get all the data you want and enrich your data set. And I like it a lot because it is very simple to call APs from with Cypher, and like you've got also the out 0 support. So like you don't like, maybe one day like you could also have the out 2 support, but like I don't really know how much work is that, but I think it's really awesome.
It's a good feedback. So OAuth to support would be really cool, and as you have the expert in-house with Ryan Boyd, so it shouldn't be too hard to add this to APOC.
So is that, just to explain for everyone, that's a way of using APIs where you have some sort of authentication that you need to use to get the API? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's true. So actually, fun fact, some of the other database integrations like Elasticsearch integration is also using load.json under the hood. So you don't, it's not just for the users, but also APOC internally uses load.json in a lot of places as well for doing other things, also like geocoding and so on. So it's very versatile. And, you know, Mark and I have a special dedication and history with load.json as well.
Yeah, that's the one we've been wishing for since about 2015. So I guess we could ask the same question to you then, Adam. What's your favorite functions or procedures that you've come across or had the chance to play with?
And what would you wish for if you could, or if you can actually. Unmute yourself, Adam.
Still gotta hit the unmute. We've hit it twice. There we go.
Evil. Rookie mistakes. So I was going to mention the spatial geocode once, because I think that's awesome for getting geodata into your database. But I think more important than that, especially with the set of blog posts I've written, is that having the complex graph algorithms like page rank between this centrality, having those just out of the box is huge. I think it's great that you can just install this package straight away, and then within a couple of queries you can really dig down into your graph and find some really interesting insights into the graph. In terms of things I'd want, think of too much more. I think it's such a big package and there's so much to explore. I think that the only thing that I would wish for is some of it would be integrated into Cypher itself, so you didn't have to install this extra package.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, cool. Okay, cool. And with that, I'll just talk a little bit about what's in the box and what's new, and then we go into the info and questions section. And if you have any questions, please share them on Slack in the online meetup channel or the APOC channel, and then we can help you answer the question. So I hope you all know what kind of user-defined procedures are, so that kind of.
Michael, are you wanting to show slides at the moment because it's still showing your video? Might have to.
Oh, I was showing slide all the time. Let me see.
I think I switched it when we were having the chat.
Okay, let me see. Start sharing. Oh, it says you're presenting to everyone. I'm not sure I can stop and re-share. Come on, computer. It says you're sharing, but now I'm sharing again. Okay, cool. Proper recursion.
Oh, now we're into. Okay, there we go. Yeah, now we're on to the slides. Perfect. Adam, you need to mute.
Can you see them again?
Yeah, there we go. We're good.
So I think many of you know what a user-defined procedure is. This also exists in many other databases. So it's something that you can write in a programming language, but then you can call actually from the query language. And that's the same is true on in Neo4j as well. And I hope some of you have already used user-defined procedures or procedures in general. Some of them actually are part of Neo4j as a product. I hope some of you also have written their own. So the Neo4j manual has some really good documentation on these. And we also have some pages on those on the developer pages. And I hope many of you have used APOC. And I hope as well that many of you have raised issues, contributed, or if you haven't, then please do so in the future. So in Neo4j, Neo4j started out as an embedded Java API. Then we got a server with REST, Cypher, and then we went to 3.0 with user-defined procedures as extension points, and in 3.1 we got user-defined functions as extension point, and in 3.2 we get user-defined aggregation functions as the extension point, which is really cool. Okay, and it works like this. You just talk Cypher to Neo4j and use procedures and functions as if you would use Cypher. So it's really transparent for the end user, which is really cool. And the syntax for user-defined procedures is you call them, and you may or may not yield results. So you may also yield multiple results at once. So it's like multiple columns. And then you can do things like those. In recent versions, yield actually became more powerful because you can now do yield where. So you don't have to put a with in between. So you can just do yield to or yield date and then where something. And text parameters. In recent times, we have default parameters, so you can also leave off standard values for parameters. So you can just pass in the minimal thing that you need. And they are currently implemented in Java or other JVM languages, so you can also use Groovy and I think Scala as well. We also have some experiments using Python for that, which I hope will make it into Neo4j at some point. That would be really cool. And with the data that comes out of the user-defined procedure, you can do whatever you do, right? So you can create data, you can find data, you can, do whatever. And procedures are not restricted to interactions with the graph on Neo4j. They can, export data, import data, reach out to other databases, to other services, can do complex operations and so on. In Neo4j 3.1, there were actually a few new procedures. So one is DB schema, which Peter Caillot wrote with Luke Gannon. And it's similar to APOC metagraph, that it kind of inspects the database statistics of Neo4j and returns you a virtual graph of nodes and relationships which represent a metadata graph. But there are also some other cool procedures that are kind of baked into Neo4j that the browser uses, for instance, for listing and killing queries. So you can also choose to list queries and kill them and filter them and kill them like yourself by filter them by runtime and then kill all a bunch of them that originated from a certain user with a certain runtime, and you just kill them on a regular basis. There's means to resample indexes. Sometimes that's necessary. There are clustering procedures for Neo4j causal clusters, which are also used by the drivers in Neo4j, but you can also use them for other things. So for instance, in APOC, there's a procedure which calls the cluster overview procedure to render a graph view of the causal cluster, actually. And then, of course, security procedures for creating, changing, and editing users. And there's the new procedure in 3.1 that lists your functions. Actually, what I did in APOC was I use dbms functions and dbms procedures internally as well now to render the APOC help procedure. There were some updates like where of the yield. I already mentioned that. In 3.2, we get procedure sandboxing, which is a bit intrusive. So it disallows you to use internal APIs of Neo4j unless you list or white box your procedures that do that. So that's a security measure to kind of further narrow down the potential security risks. You can now, as a system administrator or ops person, you can decide which procedures will actually be loaded. So you can have a whitelist in Neo4j conf which decides which procedures will be actually loaded, which is really cool. So you can restrict what kind of users are able to do or not to do. And this is this. And otherwise, you have to whitelist all the procedures that use internal APIs and custom aggregation functions, which unfortunately we haven't found time to put some in APOC. I have some good ideas on how to use them. For instance, for graph algorithms, you could use them to take in all the data that should be computed upon and then use the custom aggregation function to actually run the graph algorithm. Or for exporting data, you just write a statement and you pass just your stuff into the aggregation function and it exports the data that's passed in without you having to collect it first into collection. And of course, custom aggregations for more complex math and statistic functions also make a lot of sense. So if you have any ideas in this area or any experience in like mathematics or statistics or ML also, and would like to contribute, I'd be more than happy to take your ideas and contributions. What's kind of annoying with procedures is that you always have to do the call and yield syntax, especially for small stuff like predicates and computing expressions. It was kind of annoying, and that's why in Neo4j 3.1 we got user-defined functions, and we turned these procedures that you see here into functions, and so it makes it much easier to call them, because you can just call them inline in every expression or predicate or anywhere where they can use a value in Cypher. You can also call use a function, which is pretty powerful and pretty cool. Makes your queries and statements much more readable. And there are only two drawbacks to functions. So one is they can only read data; they can't write to the database. And the second one is that they can only return a single object, which might be then a collection again, but in general, it's they only return a single object. So you have to be aware of that. And for APOC, we created, so this is an example of a user-defined function. It misses actually the return statement here, as I can see. Really simple. Actually, it's interesting. Most of the procedures in APOC actually are super simple. So they have like between 1 and 5 lines of code or so. So it's really a convenience of packaging some functionality and making it available in Cypher. It's not like hundreds of lines of code in a procedure. That's rather uncommon for a library. You'll rather see that in like custom procedures in customer projects or in business projects, where you have like much more business logic and procedures. But for APOC, most of the procedures are very small. So that's why I can also encourage you to have a look at the code. And if you want to help out, then it's also easy to add new stuff. Some updates on APOC. Let's see. So we turned actually around 100 procedures into functions. So we have around currently 200 procedures, 100 functions in APOC. We have some new documentation for APOC around. Let me just show you. So there's, by the way, there's the spring release blog post if you want to read more about it in detail and see what changed. There's the APOC Awareness Month blog post if you want to look into that. Sandboxes, we don't want to do. User guide. So something that changed here is that we now have APOC documentation for all the versions. So you can say, I want to see APOC docs for 3.2, and then you see APOC docs for 3.2. And 3.0 as well. Something else that I put in is to have direct links to the release downloads here in the version table, and it says which APOC version is using which Neo4j version. So unfortunately we need that because we use some internal APIs of Neo4j, and some of those are not meant to be used from the outside, and so that's why they are not stable. And the other thing that is really new in the docs is this here. Thankfully, Florent extended the procedure compiler that he also wrote a blog post about, to be able to output the information on all the procedures. So it outputs for each procedure the name, the type, the signature description, and so on into a CSV file, kind of. And then I use this just in the ASCII doc of Neo4j procedures and functions, and we can include that, and so we don't get any outdated tables here anymore, which is really cool. So there's this ongoing work. And because this is an sortable table, you can also just sort. It should jump around, and you can of course also search. So for instance, if I want to do search for between, then I see all these functions. So index betweenness, centrality, and so on. So you see that it's quite helpful to have this. But also in other places, you already use these generated lists in the docs, so we don't get out of date and manual effort for things like that. So feel free to check out the guide, which is very useful. And we have more docs to come, but of course we need help because there's so much in APOC that's not well enough documented yet. So we really would love to see contributions, and contributing to docs is really easy. You just go to to GitHub, open the docs document and edit it, and then you can just send a pull request directly, right? So it's not a.
What would you say is, Michael, what would you say is the best way for people to contribute? If that's the bit they want to contribute in, would it be best to, is it like a list of ones that they could look at, or do they just?
That's a good question. So we should actually do that. As a first step, perhaps it's contribution would be good to kind of highlight or point out things in the documentation that's lacking. So we have also in the issues, if you look at that, a documentation label, I think. And so we already have some here, but of course you want to have more. And so you could just create an issue when you see something is lacking or something is missing, and then you can use these to kind of prioritize or kind of add a like help wanted label to those, and then people can look at. So there's also a help wanted label.
So the help wanted one is where you're making a request for a procedure or function. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And we want to do more of these, of course, as well. But it's really easy to do this because you just edit the ASCII doc and then you just create a pull request. And so, for instance, if I look at structure here, I can say edit this, and then I can directly edit and then send a pull request to the project. So
if you wanted to create a new page, what would just copy an existing one? Is that the easiest way to do it?
You can either copy an existing one, that's probably easiest, and you would do create new file here, and then you create a new file, and you can take the, for instance, if you take this, the raw thing here, and but it's just really basic ASCII doc thing, so it's nothing special. So that's one thing that I would like to highlight, kind of documentation.
Cool. We've got a question on the Slack chat.
Yeah.
It's not quite related to documentation, but it's from Mike Morley. So Mike's been as we've obviously talked about JSON endpoints, and Mike was asking, what about if you have XML style SOAP endpoints? So Mike's working with a HR enterprise system that has data in that sort of format. What would you? Is there a way that he could work with data like that,
exactly.
or what would you do?
So we can look into this as well. Let me just quickly look into it. So besides load JSON and load JDBC, there's also load XML. So if you call, for instance, let's see.
So you're running Neo4j locally at the moment, right?
Well, here I run Neo4j locally, but you can also use a sandbox.
And then how would you see which procedures are available? What would you?
So the official ones are you do call dbms procedures, and that shows you all the procedures. It's 245 procedures right now, and the same for functions.
Cool. So that includes APOC ones and default.
But of course, that's not really helpful, right? So, and that's why we call APOC help. And
okay.
XML here, and then we just see the XML functions. So you can just APOC help and then keyword, and it shows you the procedures that are related.
So for the SOAP type APIs, would you be able to put in like a link to it in there? Is that what you?
Exactly. So you have
cool.
XML simple. And I just have to find an URL. Let's see, we take, I just wanted to see if I have a, where's my finder? I had one that, set for Google Maps. So this is a Google Maps response thing that I just pulled from my Dropbox, but you can imagine this is, so yield. I don't have to do anything. I can just call it like this, and then you get a nested structure back that represents your XML document.
So what does that do? Does that give you like a nested map structure off the XML?
It turns the XML document into something like JSON. Of course, you have to take attributes and children and stuff like that into account.
Mm-hmm.
What you can do is you can just return this as a value, but I can also say I want to return keys of value. And then I see, okay, my top level thing has type and document. So I could do like a document, and in the document submap, we have type, style map, description, folder, and name. And if we go like I want to fit it down into.
So are those like the top level XML tags, are they? What you did to begin
exactly.
with?
It turns the XML element tags into properties in the So, and then placemark is something I think that actually is directly values. So, and you see placemark is actually an array of 2 placemarks, and then you can take these placemarks, for instance, to create nodes from them or find nodes or something like that, right? And if you look at the document itself, XML document, it's just like this. And if you look for placemark, then you see that it's in folder, there's a placemark element, and all these placemark elements go into that, right? So you can just kind of navigate the XML document from Cypher as well. And actually, there's also a documentation page. If you look at this, some stuff is documented. It's not that nothing is documented. That's too much stuff. So load XML. So there's a load XML documentation page. It uses here the book XML by Microsoft as an example, and we can just load this, and then it loads the book into this map structure, and then you can introspect that with values and so on. And there's also XML simple, which turns it into a simpler map structure, which is documented also here somewhere. Yeah, so where the structure is simpler and more condensed because it does not do every element and it does not keep order of elements. So if you have like element 1, 2, 3, then something else, and then element 4, 5, 6 of the same type, then XML simple will not keep the order, and load XML will keep the order actually. So it's all documented here as well. And actually, something that I wanted to show you before I forget is that you can actually have some of the help pages are turned into an Neo4j guide, guides.neo4j.com/APOC. And so it tells us something about APOC's history, releases, and then how they called and how help works. And then you can, for instance, click on the load XML, and then we can kind of click our way through here. So this is the XML file. And here we can just run these statements directly as, oops, I think I might have changed branch here, so I have to act. And so that's kind of an interactive way of exploring the Neo4j documentation. And as you can see, I have to fix these branches here. That's a good point, actually. Can someone take a note of that, please? Okay, and in general, if you look at the areas of APOC, it's metadata stuff, conversion stuff, collection utilities, data import, export, integration, graph algorithms, graph refactoring, and control transaction execution. And functions for time and date conversion, collection handling, and time to live. We have triggers, parallelization, and so on. So there's a lot of stuff. I already showed you this. These are the default values. You can leave off default values when you call stuff. And exactly. So, and now we can look at some more questions and demos, actually. So I would kind of start with some simple things, but you can all, like, all three of you can just throw things at me. So something really simple is, of course, APOC help. I already showed you that. Call APOC help. For instance, I want to know something about JSON, then I just do APOC help JSON, and I see all these things. I see there are a number of functions which turn JSON into string maps and convert it back. So when I, for instance, call APOC convert to JSON, then I could, for instance, let's use this as a function, and I pass in, for instance, a map of like mark here, and it turns it into like a JSON string. And we can, of course, say, and mark as a city, where the name of the city is London. We can also do this, and if we put it into a collection, then it also puts it properly into a collection. Right? And so that's the one direction. Of course, you want to convert it also back from JSON again, right? So what we can actually do is we turn this into a string, and then we actually return APOC convert from JSON string. Let's see if I got it right. No.
So that first one, the to JSON, would that be if we wanted to like expose the data to an API, or?
That's actually if you either want to expose data to an API, or if you get data in from somewhere and you just want to store it in a property without kind of deconstructing it into properties, or if it's a like deeply nested structure that you just want to store as a string somewhere, then you can use that, for instance. I just have to cheat a little bit. So the from JSON, exactly. So for from JSON, you actually want to determine what the result type is. So you say from, oops, sorry, wrong. You say from JSON list, because Cypher is type aware and it would otherwise not return that stuff correctly. So here we have now a nested Cypher structure again, which is the map of list of maps. So you can turn it in both directions. So you can get a string from an API and turn it into a thing. Something else that I added actually recently is a JSON parse support. So what you can do if this works is you can pass in as a second argument a JSON parse here. So for instance, that's data. So for instance, if I do like .name, it should only return Mark's name. Oops. Oh, sorry, because it's in what's the syntax? Yeah, so it would only return Mark's name. You can kind of reach into JSON documents and pull data out. And of course, this JSON parse syntax also works in load JSON. So let's look at the APOC load JSON example, because that's something that's super useful as
yeah, so should we do what we do one more? We've got probably about 15 minutes left, so we could probably do one more, and then maybe we can have a bit of a chat with Thomas and Adam about how they think what's the best way for people to get involved in the competition.
Yeah. So here this example is Stack Overflow. So this URL is a pre-encrypted or pre-set Stack Overflow URL that has 100 Neo4j questions, the latest 100 Neo4j questions, and it will turn it into a proper JSON thing if it passes it correctly. And so we can take this and pass it into Neo. So we call APOC load JSON into that, and then we turn like the items, which are the questions, into item. We unwind them, and then we return item title, item owner, and creation date, and then what else is in the key in the item. So this is like the title. This is the complete map of the owner here. Or you can also look here. This is the creation date, and these are the keys of the item. So if you now wanted to do not all of this kind of in Cypher, but you wanted to say return value. Let's say we wanted to say we want to put in I think it was it item or items? Item type. So we can actually reduce the number of items. So here we see like a list of all the items that come back, right? And then we can do .item, .title. And so I'm not 100% good on the syntax of the JSON parse stuff, but you can imagine what it looks like. So you just pass in like an XPath entrance, and then it's available. Cool. And so there are tons of other things that you can do with APOC, of course.
So what would you for the APOC awareness mark? What would you? So I guess we can go to the question. What would you suggest is the best place to start if you've never used it before? Or for example, installing it.
So installing is covered on the APOC README pretty well. So you more or less just go to the repository, and there's a note on installation, so it shows you the link to the most recent release. You just download this, and you put it into the plugins folder, For Neo4j desktop, if you have desktop installed, unfortunately, you have to put it into some other places as well, because there's some weirdness going on in terms of registering extensions in Neo4j. So in OS X, you have to put it in 2 directories, and in Windows, you have to put it in program file section. But then you can, from then you can use APOC, or you can also just use the sandbox. If you don't want to bother installing it, you can also create a blank sandbox that has no data in it, and then you can just go use that. And in general, for the competition, I recommend looking for some open data, get it modeled, imported, and then go crazy, or take some data that you already have and make it available to some other place, or use APOCs, or talk about like things like graph refactoring, which are really interesting. So Thomas, you mentioned modeling, right? What do you do when you want to go from one model to the next model? So what are the steps that you can do? I think that's also quite.
So we've got a question on the live chat. Let me just ask you. So this is from Ward Cunningham. So Ward asks, so the question is, I rebuild my graph daily from 15 different sources that vary day to day. Any advice on how I could incrementally update my graph when new data for any given source appears? Would be the
yeah, that's a good question. So if your sources have some indication of new data, something like an e-tag or a timestamp, time to live or so, then I would recommend that you store like this e-tag or this time to live information in Neo4j, and then you compare the e-tag with the one that you already have. And in, for instance, in load.json, at least you can, there's a variant where you can pass in header parameters. So you could pass in an e-tag or a time to live, or not, what's it called? Not changed if or something like that. Header, and then the API would just return no new data or something like that. Or of course you could compare the timestamps of things that come in with the timestamps that you already have in the graph, and only create graph structures from the for the new information. There's also something in APOC that's called job control, and so that you can also do something like a cron job, which kind of periodically reaches out to an endpoint, and which is periodically out to an endpoint. Where's my user guide? Yeah. Job management. And runs a regular job every like hour or so, and calls a separate function. Yeah. That's also quite useful in this regard. So you can submit jobs, you can cancel jobs, you can list currently running jobs as well. And so that's kind of a little bit in cron-like thing that you could use for that. And something else that I wanted to mention was, oh yeah, and APOC also has triggers. So you could also say whenever something in graph changes, I actually take this information and go out to an API. I think, Thomas, didn't you have a blog post on this, how to use triggers to enrich data in a graph?
Yeah, I did actually. It was enriching your data with knowledge graph.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. If you just go down, because like what I do, like I mostly do. I work with market teams, and like they give me like Google spreadsheet or like some SQL table, and like I import it to Neo4j, and like then the next thing is like I have to enrich this data. So like I've been actively searching for like free APIs that you can easily enrich your data from the internet. And like one cool example of that was the Google Knowledge Graph. And I've made a combination of it, like so for every, like you can filter, like I said, like for every person that's created in my graph, check the Google Knowledge Graph and see if it has any information about this person, and save it to Neo4j. So like that's really awesome.
Yeah, so you have like you get the data back here from the knowledge graph, and then you take the node and you just set on the node all the properties from the detailed description. So whatever comes back from the Google knowledge graph, no matter how much you just add this information to the node. Right?
Yeah, because like I think like Neo4j is all about enriching your data and adding context to your existing data. So like finding cool APIs to help you do that is really awesome. And like it's very simple, as you can see, how to do this with Cypher.
It's
like
a single statement, right? So if you look at it, so the inner statement is just this here, more or less, right? So it's
you just unwind all the created nodes, and then we say if that node has a person label, check Google Knowledge Graph. So yeah, that's
you can just,
awesome.
Yeah, cool. So it's really easy. You just get the data that has been changed. You check the labels for person. You actually can say here end of person, and then you just go to Google and ask it for the data, and then get the data back. And here you just set the information on the node.
Yep.
Oh. Other ideas from you or Adam or Mark that people could try out for the. So Mark, you also did a lot of stuff with different data sources and also with data science topics, right? In Neo4j and recommendations and so on, right?
Yeah, I mean, a fun one would probably be to figure out the Meetup API is all in JSON, and all the stuff I've done with that before has been to convert that to CSV and then load it in. So that would be an easy one to probably go straight from JSON into Neo4j, and that has all sorts of interesting data. So you could, for example, and it's all open. So you could take, for example, the Neo4j online meetup. You take this group and do some analytics on that, and say, have a look where are people coming from, what topics are they interested in, and then come up with maybe a recommendation of what our next meetup should be on.
Yeah, that's
so
a
could
good
do that.
point, Mark. So, for instance, we have this data also in the community graph of Neo4j, so which also has APOC installed. So you could also just go to the community graph and build a demo around the community graph of Neo4j, which has all the meetups and all the Slack messages on all the Twitter data and all the Stack Overflow questions.
Yeah, so we've got all of this runs a AWS Lambda job once an hour that queries the Twitter API, GitHub API, and loads any public data and puts it into the graph. And then if you've ever read the weekly newsletter that Michael and I compile this week in Neo4j, we get all the content by writing Cypher queries against that graph that tells us what's the latest stuff that's happened in the last week. So that's actually how I found Thomas and Adam's blog post. It was like they were right at the top of my recommendation of what I should put in the newsletter. And so then we thought, let's get them on the show with it. So I guess we should give it one more question to Adam. Have you got any advice you would give for people who want to get involved in this? Where would you suggest they start?
I'd say it's so easy to install. I think that's one thing that surprised me is it was so easy. All you have to do is you download the jar file, you put it in your plugins folder, and then go. There's loads of things you can do with getting and pulling the JSON. One of the things I've been looking at is pulling in Facebook and Twitter information and combining that together, and then using the centrality and things like that to actually run and gain insights on the graph. So I think my insight would just be to, if there's an API, and there's loads of, I can't remember any sources, but there's loads of open APIs and lists of APIs. Just try and find two, bring them together, and then just start playing around with them. It's as easy as that, really, and Neo makes it fun to do as well.
Yeah. So I've also some other examples. For instance, one of our colleagues here at Neo4j used APOC to pull data out of Trello because that Trello's search functionality is kind of lacking. So, and he wanted to kind of get some statistics and information about the cards that he created. So Dana actually used APOC to pull out of Trello all the cards and then put it into a graph and turn it into the statistics that you wanted, right? I think I put some ideas as well in the blog post. So if you are looking into any data sources, any data sets, any machine learning tools that you want to integrate, visualization, that's something that I want to do more actually. So there's Gephi integration in APOC directly, but for instance, to be able to return like D3 format directly from Neo4j without any conversions, for instance, that would be nice to have. Enriching nodes with centrality measures and returning them and rendering them properly in a good way, that would be also really cool. Or use Linkurious, Ogma, which uses WebGL, for instance, to render stuff like that. And I think there are enormous opportunities. Also, if you want to combine data sources, that's also really cool. Where you can say, okay, I have all these different data sources and want to do something with that. Or if you do want to do software analytics, for instance, that's also a very thankful topic as well. And then the other thing that APOC also has, if I have do I have 1 minute, is virtual nodes and relationships. So for instance, if I have here my graph, I don't know what I have in my graph. This is network management graph. Okay, interesting. So for instance, I have here racks in my network management graph. So I have like 40 racks in my network management graph, and each rack has machines, right? So it has a machine. I don't remember the direction. Machine. So it has all of this. It has 200 machines each, but I want to just see aggregated information, right? So I would could do something like that. I could say call APOC create virtual node. The label is machines, so plural, and the property is name rack.name. So, and there are, for instance, machines in rack. This is my virtual node, yield node. And then I call APOC create the relationship. I pass in my rack. I pass in relationship type, for instance, I don't know, holds. I pass in properties. So this is my count here. And then I pass in the other node at the end, which is node. Here, rel, turn, rack, rel, and node. And if I do this, I made a typo here. Name machines in rack, plus. And it returns me a graph with virtual nodes, and these are all my racks in the data center, and each of them has a virtual node connected to them that it's called machines in rack. And the relationship actually has the count property 200. And if you pay attention, you see that the ID of both the relationship and the node, the virtual node and virtual relationships are all negative. So they actually are no real world nodes, but they are only virtual ones. So that's really cool if you have complex aggregation information and you want to aggregate it into a few. Yeah. Also, really nice use of APOC to create just virtual things that you project stuff together into.
Yeah, so we've only got 1 minute left. So let's quickly just tell what's up, what we're doing next week.
Exactly. So we went over the APOC updates, and so things we want to do a lot of things in APOC. What you can do is you can ask questions around APOC in Slack on 2 channels. You can ask on Stack Overflow, of course, as well. Don't forget to post. And next week's meetup where Mark and Jesus will talk about how to import the Wikipedia knowledge graph into Neo4j. So kind of combining some of that what Tomasz showed and LoadJSON, of course, and APOC to create a Wikipedia representation of Neo4j. And then also kind of automating some of that with triggers. So if you're interested, please join. If you know anyone who would also be interested in that, please join as well. And I want to do a shout out actually to Erica, a colleague of Watts, who built a wiki graph game in Neo4j, which is really cool. So you can just put in a name like Paris and a let's say another name like I don't know, London. I'm not very creative right now. And do go, and it shows you a random path or path between Paris and London. If that works, I hope it works. And it's really cool, and it's really cool to play around with, and it's powered by Neo4j. Probably has to start up the server or something. But I didn't try.
Oh well, I think we're on 6 o'clock. I think I think me and Adam have got to go, so we probably should wrap up.
Thank you everyone for attending, and I'm very happy that you all joined. And thank you, and have fun.
Yeah, thanks Thomas and Adam for coming and hanging out with us. Hope it was all right.
No problem.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Take care, everyone, and see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.